Hello. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
We can start the session.
COP27, COP27 is happening, and there is a discussion going on various topics, which includes how to decarbonize economies. Basically, the task of setting the agenda for decarbonization of national economies is given to the national countries and sovereign governments. So it is not a binding plan from COP27. But then, as part of COP agreements, including Kyoto Protocol and Copenhagen Accord, and then Paris Agreement recently in 2015, various pledges have been made, and latest pledge is 2015, where countries have given their pledge that they are going to reduce carbon emissions. Now, what is carbon emissions and why all those things have been mentioned, but we'll still look at it. And also, basically, what kind of solutions are coming up with regard to industries, energy, and climate change. I think this is what we are going to discuss in this session. So basically, what is carbonization? Why carbon is increasing? I think that we know in the last 300 years, because of industrial revolution, first industrial revolution, and subsequent industrial revolutions, a lot of fossil fuels are being burned to manufacture products or to deliver services. So for various other activities, the overall economy itself is built on carbon usage, and that led to carbon emissions. Now, in the COP discussions, as I mentioned, people, governments, and individuals agreed to reduce the global temperature to 1.2 degrees. I mean, that was the earlier target. But now, as part of COP21 in 2015, the target became 1.5 degrees. But now in COP27, there is no discussion at all on 1.5. So the impression is that now everyone is preparing to accept the global temperature increase to 2.4 to 2.5 degrees. What are the implications? Of course, we know it can lead to higher, misery for life, and droughts, cyclonic storms, floods, all those are going to increase. Food security can be threatened. So 2 degrees and 2.5 degrees is in the red category. So somewhere we thought we can still, if we can limit global temperature to 1.5 degrees, I think that's the best we can do. And even if it goes up to 1.8 degrees, that's fine. But this is what IPCC and various other assessments have been saying. But as I mentioned, there have been pledges and targets, and those targets have now been revised. Whatever they have given in 2015, they have not revised those targets. In fact, post Paris Agreement 2015, people have been asking for more ambitious goals, basically to reach 1.5 degrees, because the Paris Agreement pledges, whatever pledges were made in Paris Agreement, it was expected that those will take us into 2 degrees and 2 plus 2.5 degrees centigrade. So the real change or transition or transformation which is expected is a drastic, immediate reduction in emissions. And that should be going beyond what has been committed already in Paris agreement. So basically, that's not happening in COP27. They are not revising their pledges. They are not reducing their goals. So I think we are going to be in this range, 2 degrees to 3 degrees range, which is a very dangerous thing. And among the emissions, I think the biggest and the most immediate issue is about energy. I'll come to that, why energy and what. But you can see here different gases. Usually when you are talking of carbon dioxide, you see this only carbon emissions. This blue band is what is discussed. So the blue band is increasing, 59% to 61% to 65, 64 in 2019, and it is increasing further. But other, like deforestation and other, because of deforestation, there is carbon emissions. So that is also increasing lightly. It was high, but reduced a little from 13 to 11%. The methane gas, I think this is again coming from energy usage by the economy. So even that was 21%, but it has constricted to 18%. But still, it's a substantial area. Nitrous oxides are also there. Fluorinated gases are there. So, but the big, problem is this carbon dioxide from fossil fuel and industry. So that means energy and industrial production. So this we have to keep in mind when we are discussing. Now this is the latest, International Energy Outlook report. This is again assessment of what kind of investment is required for if you want to reach net zero emissions by 2050. You know this, all this European Union and most countries, they have started talking about net zero emissions. So each one has a different target. Most of them have given 2050 as the maximum. India gave 2070 and China goes up to 2060. So, but 2030 was the least or the earliest deadline which we are looking at. So this is the assessment of what kind of investment is required to reach those pledges. So you can see the thick green is with net zero emission pledges in law. That means it becomes binding. So when it becomes binding, the estimation is that the investment on fossil fuel will decrease gradually, but 2022 there is a slight increase because of Ukraine-Russia war, which has upset the energy markets. Now this is this is the investment with net zero emission pledges in policy documents. That means governments will announce a policy. They may not implement, but still there can be investment coming on that. So even that investment is, up to 2019, it maintains a certain degree of 200 billion US dollars, but it has reduced slightly in 2020 and again increased in 2021, and now again in 2022 it is increasing. Similarly, without net zero pledge, that means do nothing scenario, even then there will be investment in fossil fuels. So this is an assessment which shows comparatively that if net zero emissions is on path, the fossil fuel investment will come down. No, this is, because one of the issues which is raised when we are discussing energy sector, energy is basically electricity and whatever energy is produced using fossil fuels like coal, diesel and petrol and other resources. So the general power, but this is about power generation cost. So you can see that average power generation costs are increasing. In European Union, it has gone up by 40%. In India, it is reaching almost 30%. Korea, Japan, everywhere power generation costs are increasing. And why? It's because of the cost of fossil fuel. It could be mining, it could be transport, and various other factors. So coming from that, because with the costs are increasing, many people may not be able to afford, electricity, because electricity is seen as a efficient method of energy delivery. So in the COP discussions, or even outside that, electricity is seen as a replacing service for fossil fuels, like even in transport, electricity vehicles, in industry, instead of boilers using coal, electrified boilers. So this electricity is being focused upon as one of the transition mechanisms from for reducing carbon emissions. So then if the cost of electricity is going to increase, what is its impact on residential sector or poor people? I think this is what is one factor. So here you can see people without electricity. This is in sub-Saharan Africa. We are seeing red color, and this yellow color is Asia, and this small band is rest of the world. So most sub-Saharan Africa, uh, this is again a scenario based on different scenarios and net zero emissions and other scenarios which are developed by International Energy Agency. So 2021, we can see almost 400 million people, 500 million people, 600 million people in East Africa, Sub-Saharan Africa, they don't have access to electricity. So they are using wood or whatever material for their cooking or whatever purposes. In Asia, it is almost about less than 180 million people who do not have access to electricity. So, but if without access to clean, this is without access to electricity. So these are the people who don't have without access to clean cooking. So the energy needs of almost 800 million people here, and then almost 200 million, 2000 million people here. I think is still the problem. So that means the energy costs, energy prices, I think they are going to be under discussion. What is the source of electricity and energy is that we have to discuss now. So solar energy, of course, we know is a major alternative to the current source of electricity. Instead of thermal power plants and other sources of fossil fuel energy, solar photovoltaics are the alternative. So, but in that there are a lot of problems because of the structure of solar photovoltaic manufacturing. So, in the last decade, it has moved away from Europe, Japan, and the US to China. So now China is almost 80% of photovoltaic production across, the supply chain is controlled by China. And we can see that this has happened because of investment. China has invested 50 billion US dollars in new photovoltaic capacity, which is 10 times more than Europe. And through that, they have created 3 lakh manufacturing jobs. So for solar photovoltaic, we need polysilicon production, ingots, wafers, cells, and modules. So all these are being now dominated by China. So China also has 10 top suppliers of solar photovoltaic manufacturing equipment, suppliers in China itself. So now China has become very instrumental in solar photovoltaics. Unless China cooperates, so this brings in political, geopolitical, and trade angle into energy transition. So who is having what resources, what are the technologies, and at what price those technologies and equipment is available for transition. So one of the other points which is being discussed is batteries. When the batteries which are now being used for electrical vehicles, they require a mineral, and that mineral is nickel and then lithium. Sorry. So lithium mines are available mostly in Latin America and one or two African countries, and now they are owned by China. So China controls lithium, and of course nickel deposits are there even in Latin America, Bolivia and other countries. So now there is a even in COP27, now they are discussing if they can form a forum like OPEC. OPEC is what has been a oil producers economic cooperation. I think that's what I think the acronym says. But this is a coalition of countries which produce the oil. So they have been dictating the prices of oil for the past 20, 30 years. So similar kind of platform is being proposed for nickel and lithium, because now these have become very important for a transition in the energy, which again will have implications on carbon emissions. So ultimately, carbon in the atmosphere is the biggest threat. So who are the top emitters? I think this is again a data which shows that Russia, China, US are the biggest, including India. And of course, Brazil is also there. So the topmost is China, US, India, Russia, and followed by Japan, Germany. So carbon emissions, this is a 2013 data. I think latest data is also available, but even that data shows the top four are China, US, India, and Russia. So among which sector this carbon emissions are coming? So this is again old data. I think latest data is also available, but largely you can see that industry contributes 21%, electricity and heat production. This is what I was mentioning, energy sector. So energy sector also produces carbon emissions, and that's because wherever they use coal, diesel, that emissions are there. Then transport is there. Agriculture, forestry, and other land use is also included. They mentioned 24%, but agriculture basically these are industrial agriculture, and that is mostly based in US and Europe. So they have large livestock farms, and they are stall fed, and so these animals produce a lot of methane. And of course, agriculture, I mean, crops like paddy, even they are supposed to release methane. So overall, when we are saying agriculture releasing carbon emissions, it is due to, again, fossil fuel uses. It could be fertilizers, it could be pesticides, and using tractors. So all these together forms carbon emissions. It's not a traditional agriculture. Traditional agriculture does not have carbon emission potential. Forestry, of course, the forests do not produce carbon. They don't emit carbon, but deforestation leads to carbon emissions. So when we are saying this land use, agriculture and forestry, then depending on the activity, the carbon emissions will happen. So transportation is another sector. Then buildings, big buildings, tall buildings, they also contribute to 6% of carbon, greenhouse gas emissions. So again, fossil fuel consumption, as I mentioned, all fossil fuels, carbon and other fossil fuels. In Telugu, శిలాజ ఇంధనాలు అంటారు. శిలాజ ఇంధనాల ఉపయోగము ఏ మేరకు ఉంది గత 25-30 ఏళ్లలో అనేది లెక్క చూపడుతుంది, ఎట్లా పెరుగుతుంది. సో ఫ్రమ్ 1998 to 1988 to 2013, we can see how global coal consumption has increased. Every fossil fuel consumption has increased. So because of the gas consumption, coal consumption, oil consumption increasing, the atmospheric concentration has also started increasing. So just in the gap of 20 years, so if you can see this, width when they are saying global warming hiatus. So 2013, so this is almost like 1995. So from 1995 to 2013, the atmospheric carbon dioxide concentration is increasing. This period corresponds with the World Trade Organization. That means the trade, as the trade has increased, globalization has increased, fossil fuel consumption has also increased. So I think this we need to note very clearly. And which are the countries, of course, we discussed earlier. So China is the biggest, has emerged as the biggest consumer of fossil fuels. So you can see it has jumped on coal from 2003 to 2011, very drastic increase from about 700 million tons to almost 2,000 million tons. Sudden jump within a period of 6 years. It shows that this is the economy which has started gobbling fossil fuels, especially coal. And in transport, all transport modes, they are also part of this carbon emissions. So, and this is the ratio which is given for different modes of transport. So road transport, rail transport, shipping, aviation, planes, and other different other modes of transport. It could be small boats or whatever, all those smaller things. So the largest segment you can see is the road transportation. Rail is very small. So shipping is a little higher and aviation is increasing. So this means, when we are talking of transitioning to more efficient or less carbon emitting methods, I think your train, rail can be seen as a good opportunity, and avoiding road transport, maybe shipping, boats, internal waterways, they can be encouraged. So there has been a lot of discussion on different modes, especially in urban areas, like if you can have mass transport or public transport, buses, trains, so instead of individual vehicles. So transportation is another major sector where emissions are happening. So this is in Indian energy production by fuel plus consumption. So this black line is the consumption, and these are the sources of energy production. So here we can see oil is about the bottom, but the biggest one is the coal, and natural gas is there, hydel power is there. This is hydel power and other renewable energy sources. So the big player, again, same as China, right from 2001, gradually and suddenly it has picked up. So how do we reduce coal is another issue. So what we have been expecting, COP27 as part of national determined contributions is adaptation, mitigation, loss and damage. These have been discussed earlier also. So basically, when you are talking of energy and industry, I think industry needs to adapt itself to the changes in global temperature and the disruption in supply chain. I think, but we are not discussing this adaptation necessity and also the mechanisms which are required to adopt industrial production or energy production in tune with the nationally determined contributions of India and also reduction in carbon emissions or leading to low carbon emissions. So adaptation is one issue and mitigation, of course, how do we avoid producing carbon emissions? So even this, I have not seen any of the industry associations, whether it is Confederation of Indian Industry or Federation of Chambers of Commerce and Industry. We have at least, few, 10 to 50 chambers of commerce and industry, but none of them are discussing climate change or the impact of climate change on industry or the impact caused by industries on climate change, the contribution of Indian industry to climate crisis. So, because we are just at a rudimentary stage, I think a lot more discussion is required on what kind of changes we need to look for, and because once the COP27 or subsequent COP, if they start, agreeing, coming up with some agreements, I think invariably we have to follow those agreements in India. So yeah, instead of being pushed, I think it's better to choose, based on knowledge, choose based on access and availability of resources. But unfortunately, industrial associations and industries in India, they're not concerned about a climate crisis at all, and that's all the more problematic. So this again, this is a major issue which we are looking at under Paris Rule Book, Article 6. There is a market-based mechanism. So this as part of this, we have to look for technologies which require which can be deployed to reduce or lead to low carbon emissions, and how finance, climate finance can be accessed to get that investment. India has this production linked incentive PLI scheme. This was introduced recently in last 1 year or so. But this production linked incentive says it encourages efficiency in production or shift towards low carbon emission technologies. But I think a lot more discussion needs to happen whether the technology is available or can we do some research and innovation in those technologies suiting large number of small and medium industries in India, because unlike any other country, India has a very substantial number of small and medium production units, basically industries, and these industries basically run on almost hand to mouth kind of economy. So their balance sheets are always very tightly run. So in that sense, if there is a mandate to transition from high carbon emission technologies to low carbon emission technologies, investment is required. So whether that investment can be financed by banks using very liberal or flexible interest rates, or will there be some subsidies from the government so that people, industries which are shifting towards green technologies, they can access this kind of financing. The problem is we are not discussing that at all. So production linked incentive also does not allow any discussion on how best to deploy that finance. Now India is saying, these are part of the pledge which we are given, which are improvised at COP26 and later based on what has been committed in Paris. So India is saying a lifestyle for environment as a key to combating climate change. But this is a goal, this is a commitment, but how it is being transformed into a governance or a public policy action is still we need to see. And second, it is saying to adopt a climate friendly and a cleaner path. So that means we have to transition in energy as a first step. And when we are saying energy, again, within energy, there are different sectors like industry, transport, um, and various other smaller sectors, including agriculture. So this transition, how do we adopt? I think that's still a debatable issue. So reducing emissions intensity of its GDP by 45% by 2030. So does it mean that India is going to go slow on the current development path and try to shift towards a more low carbon economy? I think again it's not so clear, but that's a goal which has been already committed by Indian government before COP and at UNFCCC. So they are saying we'll achieve 50% non-fossil fuel based cumulative electric power. So that means whatever the current capacity, that capacity will be exceeded, and almost 50% will be based on non-fossil fuel. So it could be solar, it could be wind, it could be other non-traditional electricity production sources. And fifth is we said we'll develop a carbon sink. That means forest afforestation will start happening, and maybe of course here it is not said one is a forest and tree cover, but it's not. I don't know if it is scientifically proven that do we have a possibility of such a sink just by raising a tree cover. It's not yet known because it's pretty slow. The tree is converting carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. I think it's a very slow process. So the target given by 2030 again looks very ambitious. So the other related to energy is to build capacities, creative domestic framework, and international architecture. Of course, this is all about the Indian economy, but it also applies to energy sector. So that means we need to build the capacities, and we have to rewrite our laws related to electricity or energy, and see how this framework can help in pushing India towards low carbon emissions. So the IPCC says where we can reduce emissions by 2030, half reduced by 50%. So IPCC says it is energy. That's the first sector. Then land use. So we need to look at the land use as part of master plans of urban areas and also overall nationwide land use. Third is industrial production. Fourth is urban growth. It could be mega cities and buildings. So it could be tall buildings or any concrete buildings we are looking at, and of course transport. So these are the sectors where options are available to reduce carbon emissions. So this is what I have been proposing. This is for the industry. What kind of change agenda they can look at? One is energy changes. They can decarbonize, completely stop usage of coal consumption, and shift towards electricity. Second is raw material change. So many of the industrial products are based on raw materials which are malignant to the earth and its resources. So either it's through the entire supply chain, right from mining up to the product. So I think we need to keep phasing out raw materials which are detrimental to environment and climate. So that's a second kind of change agenda. Third is the product range change. So we need to change the products and see how far they can respond to sustainability. So in the past, textile sector, fashion industry, in COP26 at Glasgow, they have agreed on changing the virgin material. So they are not going to access virgin material, virgin fiber material for garment production or various other products. They'll reduce that and also recycle whatever products are available, so that that recycled polyfibers are not lying here and there affecting the environment. Fourth is the technology change. So we require technologies which can help in changing materials. So if it is a certain kind of metal, can we see any other metal which can help us? And second is energy, as I mentioned. Instead of using petrol or diesel generators, they can shift to electricity. Even boiler technology can be changed to use electricity. So, and also various products, how, if at all, technology can help in increasing the efficiency of energy usage. So these are the four areas which are required whenever industry has to decarbonize or reduce its carbon emissions. So this IPCC report, even they are endorsing this kind of change. So they are saying in industry, they have to use material more efficiently, reuse, recycle, minimize waste, and basic materials, they can be changed that pilot to near. So achieving net zero is challenging because you have to affect all these changes. That means sometimes you need to bring technology, sometimes you need to bring finance, and sometimes you have to step back on competition. And if you're a market leader in a particular segment, probably these kind of changes can affect the profitability of the industry. So overall, I think this change is necessitated not just because COP is saying, not just because there is a mandate as part of Indian regulation. It is also because the industry is going to face a severe problem of production because of climate change. So with heat waves, productivity in the industry will reduce in direct proportion. And of course, heavy rains are also going to affect this operation. So industry is going to be a victim or a target of the climate change or climate crisis in various ways. So there may not be people to work with them at all. And even if you are using mostly materials, and those materials can be affected by heat waves or the floods or various other natural disasters. So industry is one of the contributors of energy emission carbon emissions, and it is also going to be the victim of this global warming and the consequent disasters which are hitting the earth. So industry needs to understand this very clearly. So I'm just stopping here. So ultimately, in conclusion, we can say one, energy sector needs to shift from fossil fuels to renewable energies and also electricity, so that energy, whatever energy produced, is efficiently used. Two, we need to see whether this transition will help in increasing the access of electricity to poor people and increase, bring in universal access of electricity to everyone, because this is where again if the poor do not get the benefit of this transition, most of the fossil fuels can be used in cooking or this life of these poor people who are in large number. So I think it's imperative that we change ourselves in energy sector, in residential sector, and of course industrial sector also. We need to shift from fossil fuels to alternatives like solar energy, wind, and various other sources of energy. In fact, this is beneficial for everyone, and all stakeholders can be happy because of that. So I'll stop here, and we can have any interaction once another presentation is done.
Yeah, please raise your hand if somebody wants to speak, or put your questions in chatting. Tayappa, I'll allow you to speak.
So maybe you go ahead. I think we can have questions later.
Yeah. Tayappa, you can speak. Thank you very much. It was an intense session and discussion on industry, energy, and climate change. Hope my voice is clear. If there is any problem, please let me know. So myself, Dr. N. Saibhaskar Reddy, I am Executive Director of Council for Earth Leadership and Sustainability. I'll be focusing mostly on the energy. I myself being a geologist, I understand including the sources of energy that we have, the natural sources or fossil fuels and other things. So here ultimately there are only two things. So that is the matter and energy in between space. This is how the whole world is created between these three. But other three things which are ruling the whole world, that is energy, environment, and economy. I say within environment, I want to add this climate change factor. But otherwise, all countries, the superpowers are, which they claim that they are industrially well developed. All this, they are developing at the cost of the environment. Means by damaging the environment, by using the energy, their economies are growing. So economies and energy both are directly proportional, and that's how during the lockdown situation, or if some country a few years back, China claimed that their GDP is very good. So when people observed the usage of energy, it was not so high. Actually, the stock market was crashing and the whole economy was poor. So even by looking at the consumption of energy, one can say the health of a country. So that is how this global the nations are, what we say, the development, all these things are existing as of now. So in this, ultimately, what we are looking at is sustainability. So by using energy and by improving economies, can we make Earth sustainable? No. By preserving what we had, I mean to say the biodiversity, all the resources, and that's how it existed since millions of years. Earth. Last 200 years only, the people are accelerating to use all kinds of resources, energy, exhausting everything almost all, and our growth is also very high. So in this situation, I think sustainability is a very big factor globally and is very although we use again and again, and sustainable development goals are also there. But still, I think there is a lot that we need to do to, especially if this definition need to continue into the future generations, then how do you see? Uh, they have nothing to even exist. Then there is the question of sustainability when we ourselves have not left anything for them to sustain themselves minimum. So here I think one of the biggest global challenge for good or bad, we have one situation that is called oil peak, or including coal peak. So this is the when you can no more extract oil sustainably or economically. So at that time, people will start exploring and exploiting this oil. That is what oil peak. 2035 is the date actually, year. Again for coal peak 2050 something around. And in spite of countries, if they might have declared themselves that we will not use fossil fuels, we will not use coal, all this will stop. Anyhow, they will stop. There is no way for them to declare that we are going to stop this. So that's what they're doing. They are in a hurry. Actually, the global scenario is Europe is the biggest disaster is the energy crisis of European all nations, almost all, except Norway. I think the Germany, it had taken long back the green path, and they have moved away from nuclear energy sources. France still continuing with nuclear. UK also given up to this coal and other things. But now I think they are reverting in the present scenario where Russia is unable to support them with the cheap gas due to the political instability in that region between Ukraine and Russia, or including the new relationships that are happening, that some countries are not producing enough gas and oil so that the prices would come down. And the prices are soaring like anything. And this is adding to inflation. Moreover, we had the biggest epidemic. And in the climate change context, now even if some countries drill more wells and they take out oil, you might be supporting the economy, but as part of greenhouse gas emissions, we'll be contributing more. If it is cheaper, we tend to use more. But people need to have a better livelihood. So how do we address? I think this is a very big global challenge happening, and OPEC countries, the petrodollar, it's a kind of virtual economy that was created, and some countries had been enjoying with that kind of exchange mechanism of a dollar. I think those things are also becoming irrelevant. So in this, I think a global reorganization of countries and the trade negotiations and all these things will put in chaos. There won't be any control much even for the UN to declare or say that you are emitting, you need to control. All these things will not happen. And many countries which are poorer, they are not even they don't even have better livelihoods, and they will not immediately stop such industries which are highly emitting. So this is another crisis. Or they might cut down their jungles, they might convert to the biomass into coal. So many things might happen in poorer countries. So energy is fundamental. So these things are happening, and the greenhouse gases being contributed because of the energy, especially from fossil fuel, including the traditional sources where technologies are very bad, and those areas are also contributing. Ultimately, we are thinking of decarbonization. I think, as our earlier expert has spoken, so decarbonization and carbon neutrality, all these things are a kind of promises or way of saying things. The jargon is beautiful, but in reality, the emissions would tend to continue. The present scenario, the modelings that we have, and the actions that have been taken place, including the failure of CDM mechanisms where they want to bring down as part of mitigation. So there was transfer of money, the transfer of technology, but there are various means again to pollute or contribute to climate change. So that is happening already. So this 1.5 degree, forget, within 1-2 years it is going to reach anyhow. But 2 degrees will reach very soon, and up to 6 degrees it might go, average global temperature. So that is already the trends are given, and that's what happening. And here, I think the younger generations, we are not looking at them actually. The present generations, they exhausted and they are still like somebody earlier, the people used to make children eat first and elders would eat later. But this elder generation or the generation which has polluted the most is in such a hurry even to eat away that leftovers and not to leave anything for the future. See, they have created enough debt for every nation, and no debt is going to be paid by the current generation. Within that, this climate change and the pollution and all these things are the biggest threats. Then how they will exist? So nobody is looking at. So renewable energies and alternative sources, I think that's what I say. Even in an electric vehicle, give them some coal, let them put in their electric vehicle and let them run, because they have thermal power plant somewhere, and they are polluting somewhere, and they are taking the clean electricity, the so-called, and they are running their EVs. In what way it is justified? And including the lithium, cobalt, nickel, graphite, all these, I think where it is existing, if you see geographically, and who is processing, China ultimately. So these are some of the very remote countries where poverty is very high and mining is so cheap because such people are working in high risk areas. And even if you map, these are the eco-sensitive zones, ecologically highly sensitive zones. And these are the countries where corruption is very high. And when we have so many challenges like poverty or indigenous communities are there, the biodiversity conservation zones they are, and political instabilities are existing in those zones. So from there, these things need to be mined, even to make this so-called what you say solar panels or photovoltaic or wind energy systems or whatever we are telling recently. So these renewable energies per se, as models, they are fine. Even solar panels, the kind of space they occupy, it's very huge. At the cost of again removing the local biomass or local animals, even in Arizona, that area, they removed lots of turtles, tortoises, land tortoise, desert tortoise, and cut away so much other existing, even that little scanty biomass from the ground. And then they had, sorry for that. This is a very critical thing actually. And yes, this artificial way of the ultimate source of energy is the only one, that is biomass, that is ultimately generated from the uh, solar system. That is renewable, given a time to regenerate biomass and use it. Then it's perfect. That is a natural system that we have given up, and we are looking at various other things. And here, even for hydropower plants, no more. The dams maladaptation, if you see, hydropower has become a kind of maladaptation in many areas. At the cost of forest, this hydropower has come, or they are causing, again, due to climate change, floods are happening. Sometimes, because of so many dams, the inundation is very high, and the water is not going out very easily, or improper management of this irrigation or control systems to release of water. And we have many examples of the biggest disasters due to hydro, including hydropower or even for irrigation, whatever they have done. So maladaptation is a big factor. In climate change, I think we need to be conscious, even suggesting somebody what is right and what technology we need to. We should have a long-term vision in whatever we suggest. I think our scientific community should not be in a haste to suggest the technologies. Uh, so this is also very critical. But sometimes we see that the air pollution that happened or the greenhouse gases that we have, they're also pollutants. This pollution led to maximum deaths globally. So the current thermal power plants, let us say, are including fossil fuel usage in our energy systems. Then the including people say that the nuclear power plants have less impact, even if we have accident like Chernobyl. I think without that, the maximum people are dying every day, millions. The whatever the traditional systems are also there. I don't suggest nuclear power as a alternative, but I'm telling even to compare that. So now I think this. The mining is going to be a big area when related to even the renewables. I think this is going to lead to again shift of focus of our many countries, especially the developed countries. Even whatever wars happened that we have seen, that is because of this energy related thing only. Mostly, let us say the Middle East relationships or the wars that happened in Iraq are including the Iran issues, many things. So I think with mining again there will be this polarity, and many countries will have tried to get into those poor countries and start mining. And here One of the beautiful examples for me is the local adaptation when we see something like Panchaki. When I was in Himalayas, the water was flowing down. It has almost no impact. Where the water is flowing, you have your grinder with some blades in the water turning. That's a perfect way. So like that, I think we need lots of decentralized energy options. That is far better. And now coming down to the community level energy, because my work is related mostly to rural energy, especially biomass. So I was looking, including earlier animal power was there, and this biomass was consumed by animals, and this animal power was the resource which was very much sustained by local communities, and it was very good. But now this mechanization is very fast in rural areas also, and we have lots of leftover crop residue. They are burning it again, contributing to climate change and global warming. So stubble burning issue now in northern part of India, a major challenge. Otherwise, all over India it is happening. It is causing smog and health issues, including contributions are increasing. I think pollution and many challenges are related to that. Anyhow, some of this biomass is being converted into pellets. There are some programs now to convert into pellets, torrefication of this biomass, and usage later on. So this energy is being wasted, including 800, 900 million tons of biomass from cross residue is being wasted annually within India alone. So you can estimate globally how much that is there. Even the pine needles, if you say, I think later in northern India, some forests, this needle, they don't get decomposed very easily. So again, the forest fires, all this contributing to greenhouse gases and climate change. How to manage this biomass from the local forest, which doesn't decompose so easily, as well as crop residue, how do we manage? And also at the same time meet the energy requirements of the local communities. So whether we are using fossil fuels in tractors, let us say, or pump sets, electricity we are using. So somehow we are providing. Rural electrification is a very big issue. It was a challenge. I think we have addressed many such challenges, including providing LPG. Now the cost of LPG is so high. Providing a cylinder is not a solution. Providing somebody a wallet is not the solution. How do they refill? So it is something like every month or every 2 months, a rural community, the amount of money that they need to spend in spite of government subsidies. Of course, the subsidy is also coming down a lot. Even governments cannot afford. And especially within agriculture, urea is one of the important factors and energy required for urea production. Any of the urea will also contribute to greenhouse gases because the nitrous oxides is a from urea because we use so much urea, it is not taken by the plant alone. Somewhere it will end up ultimately into the atmosphere. Potent greenhouse gas as compared to CO2, it is very high. So I think these contributions are again happening, but at the same time burning this LPG gas for generating urea. Now biggest challenge is another question, fundamental question is food security. So if you don't have enough LPG, that gas availability, then we may not able to generate so much urea. Already we have the people buying this urea in black in some states because it is not available so much. So it means immediately because now our crop production, whatever surplus we have, or at least we are addressing food security, is based on this urea or the subsidies that we are providing, including phosphorus and other things, phosphate basically. So these are not available much now. So I think food insecurity is going to increase, and if food is the fundamental thing, it's an energy. Either you burn energy or either in the form of calories when you intake, that is also energy. So this fundamental energy, the food security is a very big challenge globally. And in the present context, with this oil peak or this fossil fuels not existing anymore much, so I think we'll have bigger problem. And anyhow, the human power has very little meaning nowadays. Human beings have become almost all nothing. They cannot do anything. They don't even walk. So I think that is the worst of the human power now. So everything they use tools, and they don't have much energies also. And what will be impacted is local rural communities' livelihoods, like cottage industries. Many industries will be there which are supported locally. So that will be impacted because they already shifted from the traditional systems to the modern electricity and other systems. Even a carpenter, earlier he had all the materials by himself. Now even in a rural area, carpenter cannot work without power. So like that in all industries, these things have been replaced. So to get even the drinking water, some villages we have seen where there is no drinking water available, basic fundamental, when there is no power. So they cannot, they don't have those such kind of open wells and all that, because now we have tube wells, very deep wells. So that rural economy and the rural systems are the rural, especially a kind of democracy or the freedom that they had with energy, that is lost. Another fundamental thing is cook stoves. Yes, I worked on chullas, biomass chullas, and I know the challenges even now. It is not just addressing with efficient stoves we can address the climate change issues, but also the health of women and also children, and the cooking time that is taken, and the drudgery of women, and the risk of women when they get into forest to fetch food. So there are so many things around that, and now I have seen again there is a surge of interest, or people again going back to the traditional chullas. But these traditional chullas are very rudimentary, and they are like three-stone stoves. They don't address the efficiencies, and they also contribute to greenhouse gas emissions. And even including countries like Germany, I saw the number of hits on my websites have increased when there were refugees, and even now they are increasing because they don't have enough gas to cool themselves. So they are watching these traditional technologies. So somehow to adopt, and to somehow they, because they have winter now, so they have very big challenge. So I think there is a lot that we need to work on the traditional rural energy sources, or improve them, including they can have some kind of mini thermal power plants, efficient mini thermal power plants themselves, which they can use for all, like cutting, chipping wood, or cutting grass, or including they can have some electricity generated out of that. So like that, these kind of decentralized energy options we need to work on, because centralized energies are not cost effective. Not only that, the transmission losses, risks, grid failure. We have many challenges now. I think people will soon realize they are be pushed back into like 100 years or 50 years back within no time, because they need to immediately adapt to many traditional things. But overall, the carbon footprint that we are telling is again related to the use of these sources of energies. Then again, green buildings is one thing. Vernacular architecture was always eco-friendly, and the burnt bricks were very rarely used. They use local rocks and soil, clay, straw, like that, and many things. I think we need to bring down this total, including maintenance of a building after construction or during construction, or pre the materials when you are choosing. I think at every level we need to work on this, and the government buildings which are promoted are very cost, as well as the energy wise, they require more energy, including the people to stay in such houses. They need all sorts of energy. Without fan, they cannot sleep in such houses. I think the ventilators or windows or all these six fundamental things they need to incorporate. Without this, the natural elements that are very important, like the natural lighting, the natural the wind patterns or whatever, or the circulation of air within. buildings, all these things will help. That will make people live happily. So here, I think people also need to adopt a lot. Even when they use these vehicles for the transportation, the energy that they consume is and the emissions that they now at least 1 ton and above, and an average Indians are contributing per annum the CO2 emissions. I think this is increasing day by day. We need to have a lifestyle where one can walk or one can have a cycle to travel or avoid traveling. That is another area, because transportation sector is also a major contributor for this emissions. And including eating habits, that is very, very important. See, ultimately, your consumption of food is also energy, and what you eat is also right from how that food is produced and by what means it is produced. Let us say I have a poultry farm. Even in the poultry shed, I will have so much emission by the animals themselves. The amount of food that you would feed to animals also is having an impact. So all these emissions, if you put together, and if you are eating 1 kg of chicken, then ultimately you will be having more carbon footprint. So non-vegetarian, unless it is required, unless in that geography you don't get anything else, I think such kind of adaptations we need to do, including with this changed environment, what food we need to consume to for this increased average global temperatures, or what kind of food we need to consume during winters. Because once you eat food, that will also generate heat in you, so you don't require external sources of energy like heaters or coolers, something like that. So I think we need to adopt a lot in this our way of life and food habits and all that. But ultimately, whoever preaches, whoever participates in this also, including myself, everybody, we cannot be having two kinds of lives. And what we are seeing, the leaders attending COP27, coming by jet planes or unnecessary, people are just traveling as tourists. I think this doesn't show an example, and the kind of environment where they are staying, how much ACs they are using, and all these costs are there. So similarly, at each individual level, when we are questioning them, we cannot be something like armchair preachers. Yes, we need to come out and we have to lead by example. You practice and preach. So this is very much required for every individual. I think we need to adopt. We had to show the world, and especially younger generation, we had to inspire them, and our education system should also change accordingly. And I think there is a lot we need to do. Thank you very much. Thanks to everyone. If there are any questions, I will take. Otherwise, we will close the session. So there are no. Yeah, there are no questions. Thanks to everyone.